Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. I'm Martis. Yeah, we have some breaking news coming from the tensions between the United States and Russia. Of course, President Donald J. Trump over the last couple of hours have now set a new deadline, a final ultimatum, as the White House would call it, for Russia and Putin, a direct threat against Vladimir Putin. President Trump's narrative is that he's had enough. And Putin is not helping the situation when it comes to any peace being reached in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. There's a lot that's actually been happening over the last few hours. We're going to go through the update together. There's a number of videos that I'm going to show you in regards to the statements coming from President Trump. But of course, I'm going to show you the other side, what the Russians are also saying in regards to this. As you guys know, some might know, President Trump is currently in the United Kingdom, specifically in Scotland. He did meet with Keir Starmer, Prime Minister, but something very fascinating happened, which was essentially President Trump was hosting Starmer in Scotland. So he was standing there, Starmer had to go, and Trump had to welcome him in his house, and then they got on the Air Force One to go out and have dinner. None of it makes any sense in terms of what's going on. So Starmer is basically a follower instead of being a leader. But initially, when they were going into the first meeting with Starmer and Trump, President Trump mentioned that initially he gave Putin 50 days deadline, but now he's going to be reducing it. Watch this.
I would have said 5 times we would have had a deal. I've spoken to President Putin a lot. I got along with him very well. But 5 times, and every time 4 times maybe, but we've had discussions, you and I have had discussions. Yeah. We thought we had that settled numerous times. And then President Putin goes out and starts launching rockets into some city like Kyiv and kills a lot of people in a nursing home or whatever. You have bodies lying all over the street. And I say, that's not the way to do it. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed in President Putin, very disappointed in him. So we're going to have to look, and I'm going to reduce that 50 days that I gave him to a lesser number because I think I already know the answer what's going to happen.
It is interesting how Trump deals with different rivals and enemies differently. For example, with the Islamic Republic, he initially went hard, then he went basically soft. So he was saying nice things about them, say they are very good negotiators, we're still negotiating. And then obviously he hit. And then since then, he would, with them, because they are a weak enemy, he would, even right now, he would just say, he would undermine them. His narrative is, we've already destroyed the Islamic Republic, they can't do nuclear, they just can't. But with obviously serious rivals like Vladimir Putin, he goes the other way around. And when he's tired, when he's sick and tired of the whole thing, then he would actually go harder. He would basically say, I'm disappointed with Putin. Whereas with friends who are basically being weak, for example, people like Justin Trudeau in the past, or even, for example, Zelensky, he would be even more robust in terms of his language. He initially said that, and obviously then things kicked off because over the last few days, and obviously a few hours, we've had the Russians hitting the civilian areas across Ukraine, specifically also in the capital, Kyiv. There has been a counterattack, but not necessarily directly by the Ukrainian army, but by the online mercenaries, let's just say. These are the cyber attacks that's been going on. So the Ukrainian and Belarusian hacker groups have claimed responsibility today for a massive cyber attack on Russia's national airline, Aeroflot. Now, they successfully managed to ground dozens of flights. Now, the Kremlin said that they were absolutely alarmed by the incident, and they said, we will, of course, clarify the information and wait for an appropriate explanation. So, essentially, at this point, the Russians know that everybody knows who did it. It was the anti-Russians. It was the Ukrainians with some hackers from Belarus. But he knows that he has to play his cards slowly. And because there are a lot of diplomatic issues going on anyway. If it were, for example, Ukrainian drones, if the Kremlin, whether it's drones, whether it's cyber attack, doesn't really matter. If the Kremlin, Moscow in general, react badly, saying, I cannot believe Ukraine have attacked us, they've caused so much harm, they would essentially say, oh, well, yeah, Ukraine is a serious, serious threat, and they are such a big enemy, and we are scared of them. So Russia can't say we are scared of Ukraine. So what they have to do is just kind of like downplay it, saying, yeah, we're going to find out what happened. But obviously, in the meantime, Russia will be massively hitting Ukrainian territory anyway. But once Trump and Starmer went into the meeting, and of course the press and media were there asking a lot of stupid questions as usual, surprise, this is where Trump set a new deadline, 10 to 12 days from today. And as the White House has said, this is a similar style of a deadline that Trump set for the Islamic Republic of Iran. So if this passes the deadline, expect more sanctions and more attacks. Let's go.
Earlier you said that you were going to change the deadline from 50 days. So what is your new deadline? What can we expect?
I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. There's no reason in waiting. It's 50 days. I want to be generous, but we just don't see any progress being made.
Mr. President,
This is the thing, by the way. And the reason I mentioned the media in the room, if you did watch the press conference, I can't even call it a press conference, but if you did watch the whole thing, you know what I mean. You had British and American reporters and everybody else from the mainstream media. Out of 10 questions, 8 of them were stupid, and 2 of them were basically irrelevant. So they were asking questions about, for example, oh, what do you think of London and Sadiq Khan? Or what do you think of free speech? What do you think of... Focus on the priorities right now. If you want to get your clicks, then you can get your clicks. Of course, President Trump is going to come out and say free speech is important. The UK should be more pro-free speech. Obviously, duh. That doesn't really fix much. Having said that, one biggest issue that we are facing is that the media could have actually asked the right questions, could have scrutinized him even more. He gave them a lot of opportunities. He mentioned the deadline. He also mentioned what I'm about to show you next. But the media didn't actually ask the right questions to find out more about it. They just moved on to the next set of stupid gossip politics. This is where President Trump said he's no longer interested in talking with Putin.
I'm not so interested in talking anymore. He talks, we have such nice conversations, such respectful and nice conversations, and then people die the following night with a missile going into a town and hitting, recently I guess the nursing home, but they hit other things. Whatever they hit, people die. So, Adam.
Mr. President.
But then obviously the next set of questions were just completely irrelevant. So that's what you're dealing with. But the reaction from Moscow has also been interesting because obviously, as I said, if Ukraine does something against Russia, they can't really say, oh, wow, Ukraine did something dangerous. They are so dangerous. But they had to undermine them. But with President Trump, they used to kind of be on their toes. Now, for example, let's go to the deputy chair of the Security Council of the Russian Federation and former president Medvedev, who said this: Trump is playing the ultimate game with Russia. 50 days or 10. He should remember 2 things. Russia is not Israel or even Iran. Each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. Don't go down the Sleepy Joe road. Russians know that the best way to counter anything that comes from America or the White House is to play the angle that, okay, so we're not going to, for example, directly be seen to be America's enemy. What we're going to do is we're going to basically blame the tensions on the White House, regardless of who the president is, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, to basically create the division inside the United States. So he's basically saying, Medvedev, he's sending a message to the Americans, especially those who are very much against Trump or against Ukraine or whatever, or especially those who are pro-Putin, saying, we're going to use them against the White House. We're going to use that chunk of America. What we're going to do is, look, Americans, the anti-NATO Americans, President Trump, he's the reason we are having problems. He is the reason we are not having peace. He is the reason that the whole thing is escalating. I mean, it's quite clever, and it's kind of worked for the past few years anyway. But if the White House are smart, then obviously they're going to have to keep repeating the same narrative. That right now, it's Moscow that are making it very hard for any peace negotiations. About 6 months ago, a year ago, obviously it was Zelensky. The narrative from the White House was Zelensky is not making it easy. They've dealt with Zelensky. He's now fallen in line. But now the narrative should be, and is, from the White House, well, we said peace, and now we force Zelensky to say peace, whether he means it or not. What about Putin and his minions? They're not saying peace. So that's why it's in the interest of Moscow to basically play the internal card, to basically put the Americans against Americans. I don't think how long. I don't know how long that's going to last, because eventually there has to be some sort of negotiations. Having said that, Putin also had a conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. They had a phone call to discuss various things, including the Middle East, because Russia knows that they have to use all angles. So Putin obviously, again, reaffirmed his support, firstly for Syria's sovereignty, obviously. He also told Netanyahu that Russia could help Israel when it comes to the tensions with the Islamic Republic in regards to the nuclear program. Now, realistically, this doesn't do much, because what Russia really wants is to get back into Syria. That's going to be very hard with that nutter al-Jilani being in charge of Syria. Russians were basically pushed out. There are some Russians there, but generally speaking, the control that the Russian Empire had in Syria is kind of gone. And obviously the IRGC. So from what we have been told, so he's told the Israelis, my priority is to respect Syria's integrity and sovereignty, okay? But in return, I'm going to help you with Iran, told Israel. The issue here is that Netanyahu's problem with the Islamic Republic of Iran is not necessarily even nuclear. That's just one thing. For Israel, the priority is the existence of the Islamic Republic. The issue for the Americans and President Trump was nuclear, and still is nuclear. That's the biggest thing. Obviously, the nuclear threat is the biggest threat. We know that. But from the perspective of the United States, as long as the Iranian regime don't have nuclear, then it's fine. They can just leave him alone. From the perspective of Israel, it's a very different game. It's the existence of the Islamic Republic that is continuing to be a threat every single day. So clearly Putin knows this, but he had to say that. He had to basically throw something nice at Israel and Netanyahu. Say, I will help you with Iran's nuclear, even though he knows that Israel would say, okay, you can try, but that's not even the biggest issue. So that's where we are with this whole mess. We will wait for a direct reaction from Vladimir Putin later on as well, especially tomorrow. Some reaction from Canada saying Putin will need to rethink about the EU, and so will the Canadian-China puppet Carney. Yeah, that's literally CCP. Canadian Chinese puppet. What the heck is going to happen now? It's just at this point, it's the game of chicken. So who will cave in first? Vladimir Pudding, instead of Putin. This is his new nickname, says Mr. Rainbow. Fair enough. Not sure what to do with that. Let's get some reaction also from the members of 2C TV Plus. We have also just received some breaking news, which we'll of course cover properly. We are going to be talking about the ceasefire between Cambodia and Thailand later tonight, but we've also just received this concerning update about a mass stabbing in a business area, about business premises in London. I know it seems like another Monday, but this seems to be a serious, as the media will call it, incident. It's an attack, obviously. This was in Southwark in London. We will also get back to you guys on that shortly. Deb says, It's all for show. Trump will not do anything, and Putin wouldn't care if he did. This is the key point, because it really depends what you do with these sort of ultimatums and deadlines, because if Trump were to increase sanctions, the only way you can play with sanctions or punishments is, for example, I'm just saying theoretically, to completely shut Russia out. The thing is, Russia and those type of countries, with the help of the Eastern globalists, they have their own bloc. They can survive. Back in the day, for example, a country like North Korea, actually even in the 20th century, if North Korea didn't have China backing them, they would have been completely suffocated. They were completely shut down, and there's no cooperation between any country and North Korea. So it would have been a thing back in the day. But now, with BRICS and with the direct cooperation between all the other basically anti-American countries, even if you were to, for example, say everything Russian is now banned, even if you talk to someone who's Russian, we will arrest you. Even if you do that from a perspective of the Americans or the West, it's still not going to, for example, bring down Russia. It's not going to bring down Putin. So unless you have a plan, for example, again, theoretically, unless you have a plan, you know you can get into Moscow and you can take out Putin, and you know what's going to happen after him, his replacement. If you have a plan, then fine, go and try it. Otherwise, you can't just say things. It's going to be very hard. If you know that you can defeat Putin as the leader, then fine. But you also have to consider the consequences following that. If he goes down on his own or internally, that's another issue. Wait, I thought Belarus was on Russia's side, or is that just the government? So that's the government, and also a big chunk of the majority of people from Belarus. But you still, like any other normal country, Belarus will still have citizens who are on this side and that side. This actually, it's a very good comment, very good question, by the way, because we've had it so many times, especially in recent times with recent conflicts. Because of the rise of new media and social media, people are more in touch with what's going on around the world compared to before, when you just had to wait for CNN to report something. The problem with it is that while it's keeping people more informed, it's also made things more black and white. So there's a lot of people that have essentially been told certain things is complicated. You know, you have to listen to both sides, the gray area, but some countries, it's just black and white. They are purely angel or purely evil. So, for example, if you are against the Jewish nation, you would say all Israelis are the same and all Israelis are evil. See the problem, right? Or, for example, you would say everybody in India is on Modi's side and I don't like Modi's government. That's not really how reality works, because in India you will have people who are pro-Modi, you have people who are anti-Modi. In Pakistan, you have people who are pro the current government and some who are anti-current government. In Israel, you have people who are liberal, conservative, left-wing, right-wing. You have every type of person in every country. So it's the same, obviously, with Belarus. You still would have those who in Belarus would not be on that side. But obviously, it's all about proportion as well. Some countries, it's almost 50-50. Some countries, it's a tiny minority that's against the rest of them. But that question, that comment just reminded me of this whole issue that we are facing right now, because hypothetically, I mean, I am going to be talking about Cambodia and Thailand. And for the record, Cambodia are a bunch of nutters, Cambodian government and the army, and they're on the side of the CCP. But I'm not going to go around and say every single person from Cambodia is evil, just because I'm going to be defending Thailand's position in this. Or I'm not even going to be defending everything that the government in Thailand has been doing, even in terms of this short conflict between Cambodia and Thailand, in terms of the military actions. There has to be nuance. Anyway, the mainstream media, they don't want the truth. They would not even know what questions to ask. Yes, everything is scripted. They don't want to give President Trump any credit or positive press. Yeah, the press are the lame ducks. Was there any new media at the Trump press conference, or just legacy media? Only legacy media. They will not allow new media in the UK. Obviously, this was happening in Scotland, so that was never going to happen. Another super chat saying, will Iran revert to Western ways? But I mean, if by Western ways, if you mean civility and democracy and better education system and free market system, yeah, that's basically the inevitable outcome for Iran and the Iranian people. But you have to wait for the Islamic occupiers to get kicked out first, which is in progress. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this was informative. We will come back shortly to give you guys the latest update on the ceasefire between Cambodia and Thailand and find out more about this mass attack in London as well. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.